All right, I want to bring you up to date on an executive order the president has signed concerning election interference that I want to take up with the Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley. And Senator Grassley, good to have you. And I don't want to throw this at your broadside, sir, so I understand if you're not knee-deep in this. But the president has indicated through this executive order that it would give him the authority for sanctions to be put in place if found an entity has meddled in an election. So in the case of Russia, in this case, sanctions could be put in place. I know you and a lot of your colleagues were looking to toughen things up in that regard. John Bolton has indicated that this is not a response to the criticism that the president had an overly friendly meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. It is just codifying a policy that we will not tolerate this behavior in the future. What do you make of that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's absolutely necessary that the president and any of us in public office do all we can to reduce the skepticism of our election process being fair and honest and thorough. And I think the president doing this is doing what should be done at this time. In addition to what Congress has already done, appropriated some money to help the states to make sure that their system is not infiltrated by this sort of hacking. But also it follows on what Congress has had a strong position on for a long period of time, not only dealing with the election interference, but in other areas where China or where Russia has violated, like Crimea and Ukraine, and threatening the Baltics. Congress wants the president to be very forceful in that, and I believe this is an example of that force that Congress would expect from the president.
But this addresses any future interruptions, right? It doesn't go back to what might or might not have happened. I guess pretty much safely to assume did happen in the 2016 campaign.
Yeah. No, but then don't forget there's already some sanctions put on for that reason and other reasons already on particularly individuals close to Putin.
But not the government of Russia, per se.
That's right, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, I want to move on to Brett Kavanaugh right now and your timeline for a vote in committee to get it out of committee. What do you think?
Okay. Tomorrow, he is on the agenda, but under our rules that are very frequently used and seldom not used, is to hold over for 1 week something that's for the first time on the agenda. So tomorrow it will be held, Kavanaugh will be held over according to that rule, and then that puts it on Thursday, September the 20th, to have the debate, and I presume there's going to be 5 or 6 hours of debate within our committee. And then based upon the questioning of last week, I would expect that he'll be approved by our committee on an 11-10 vote.
All right, and then when it gets to the full Senate, do you expect all Republicans to vote yay?
As of now, I do, and I think that it's very necessary for all Republicans to stick together on this first vote, because I don't think that if we got a possibility of getting 4 or 5 Democrat votes, I don't think any one of those Democrats would give us the 50th vote. But if we get 50 or 51 Republican votes, then I think we're going to end up with 54 or 55 in a bipartisan way, sending Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court.
There was concern about the release of these emails concerning Brett Kavanaugh and his days working for President Bush, whether he really believed, as you've heard, and obviously we're leading this committee, whether Roe v. Wade was precedent and a precedent that could change. Now, Susan Collins of Maine had said, and telling a Maine newspaper, that she was concerned to the point that if Judge Kavanaugh, quote, was not truthful, then obviously that would be a major problem for me. Has she relayed that to you? Have others expressed concern that the judge wasn't truthful?
Well, he's truthful from this standpoint. He made very clear that after 50 years, Roe v. Wade is precedent. He made very clear that it's even a stronger precedent because it was reinforced by the Casey abortion case in 1992. And that's all he could say, because he doesn't know what sort of an abortion case is going to come before.
So you believe him, and you don't think that this warrants sort of, rethinking him as a Chief Justice on the part of some of your members?
Well, I haven't heard that any members gone that far beyond what they previously said.
Right.
I think Senator Collins has made a very strong statement after hours of meeting with him about a month ago. And I haven't heard any distraction from that original statement.
Senator, what did you make of between the protests and a number of Democrats, including Senator Cory Booker, who had that great Spartacus moment, as he called it, where he would risk expulsion from the Senate for releasing classified emails? Do you think, because he followed up with the release of still additional emails, that that's something the Senate should consider, that he should be up for expulsion?
Well, I'm not a member of the Ethics Committee, and if I was, I couldn't talk about it, but I'll leave that up to the Ethics Committee or anybody on the outside that wants to push that. At this point, I would not push it, because I think that in some of those approaches, like when he read from something that at 4 a.m. in the morning had already been said it was legal for him to have that document and to use it, I think he looked a little silly in pursuing it.
So he knew what he was doing, but what he was doing wasn't violating anything because it had already been agreed to be released.
Well, maybe the first time he read from it the night before, it could have been in violation, but then we were already in the process of getting the Justice Department to say whether or not that document could be made public, and by 4 a.m. the next day it could be public, and then what he said about it on Thursday obviously was not a violation of any rule.